I'm Allie, and today we're diving into the lore and dread behind Stoney Brooks' What Digs Itself Free.
Hey, Allie. Happy to be here. Just want to say a huge thank you for bringing me on. Never quite done anything like this, so happy to dive into some of your questions, and hopefully I don't botch it too bad for you.
I'm sure you'll do fine. Let's get started. What's something about the haunting readers won't expect going in?
At the risk of sounding too high and mighty, I'd probably say the human element of it all. I mean, I've run across a lot of these ghost hunting type stories where that entity is just smack right in your face. And, obviously it should be, that's what the readers are coming for. But it seems to be more of like a case of wrong place, wrong time versus anything else that's going on there. So what I wanted to do was kind of dive into the causality of everything and dive into, how we got from this happy-go-lucky, if not narcissistic show host who is now being stalked and hunted by this demonic entity.
Speaking of the narcissistic aspect, how do you keep readers invested in a character they probably don't like?
This is where I absolutely thrive. I love writing these types of characters. I mean, I don't know, maybe that says something about the type of personality that I have or something like that. But I love towing that line between the people that you just absolutely loathe and really want to punch in the face compared to like that traditional knight in shining armor type hero. So, I think the key to keeping readers interested for these types of heroes that aren't really likable is to give them a trait that the readers can relate to, and then also to have them doing interesting things. So, specifically with Zap, we know that he's a womanizer, we know that he's manipulative, and we know that honestly he's kind of abusive towards his staff. But we also learn that he has this kind of soft spot, especially when it comes to his niece Zoe. We learn that pretty much everything he does is to keep her safe and to keep her with him. So, I think that really speaks to a lot of people, that parental type role that a lot of people can relate to on some level.
What's a scene that felt especially creepy to write?
There were two that really stood out in my mind. The first being that hallway scene with the demon thing chasing Zap. I mean, this one was like super visceral for me. I mean, I could just perfectly picture everything going on there from, the lights flickering to that dark shadow to the full on chase. I mean, that just played out like the best kind of horror movie in my head. And I was just so compelled to get that one down on paper. And then the second one was that late night kind of talking back and forth between Zoe and Hank Williams. I mean, this one wasn't quite as visceral or gut wrenching, didn't have any of the like blood and guts type of feel to it, but it still had this just very creeping, ominous tone, kind of like bone scraping, very, very much made you concerned for her well being. And I mean, even just thinking about it now, I'm getting kind of concerned for her, even knowing where the story shakes out.
How much real world lore influenced your version of the box?
There was a decent amount of real world lore built into the box, more so around the box itself versus the demon thing inside, and specifically towards the quote unquote origin story of the box. But even still, I threw in a lot of real world anecdotal evidence and things like that in order to kind of increase the believability of a lot of this stuff. I mean, with so much information out there these days, it's hard not to do any kind of research on anything and just to write purely from the gut. I mean, unless you're like a true subject matter expert or, your world is so fantastical that only you have the true insight into it, writing from the gut usually ends up and bites you in the butt. So, I did a decent amount of research on this and used it sparingly and, pretty happy with how it turned out in this aspect.
What's a detail readers might miss on their first read?
I'm not really sure if there's anything that might have been missed on the first read. I wrote this story to be pretty straightforward, thriller type to where there's not a whole lot of nuance or subtleties that are being written in there. One thing that potentially could have been misinterpreted or kind of overlooked as backstory because it's not inherently written in the story would be that Zap wasn't always a bad guy. I mean, he's kind of a victim of his own circumstances of childhood and young adulthood that pushed him into this type of career. So early on in his career, I mean, he was probably very optimistic. He probably actually wanted to help people like Rose does in the story. But just after time, things more or less spiraled out of control, and he kind of became the guy that he is.
Talking about the guy that Zap is, what does the story say about exploiting the unknown for entertainment?
I didn't really go into this one with a message or theme in mind. I mean, really, it was just a fun idea that I'd been kicking around for some time, and I just couldn't seem to shake it. So I had to kind of get it out on paper. And initially, when I started thinking about it, it almost had more of like a comical aspect to it, to where it's like this wacky ghost adventure who's getting attacked by spirits and demons type of thing. But once I got serious about it, it started to take a more serious and darker tone. So, I mean, I guess if you really drill down to the heart of it, it's saying that exploiting things that you don't understand really doesn't go well for you. Kind of like a play with fire, you get burned type of thing. And we see that pretty clearly here with Zapped, where he's this cocky showboat who seems to have done it all and kind of conquered the world of the paranormal, until he encounters something that he truly can't face and doesn't have the skills to come up against.
How do you decide what to explain in horror and what to leave unknown?
There's a fine line in terms of what to explain versus what to leave up to the imagination. I mean, that's really the beauty of kind of storytelling, is that at least in theory, if you wanted to be edgy, you could get away with explaining nothing and leaving everything up to imagination. You might not have a happy reader base, but you could do it. So with this one specifically, I kind of had a unique out to where I could bury a lot of things inside of dialogue. I could say like, welcome back to the set of X. We're at this haunted location, and here's what happened, 50 years ago, type of thing. So, I mean, there was that fine line to walk, definitely. And, it actually came up quite a bit during the revision process, specifically working with my editor, to where I had, a lot of info dumping inside of my dialogue that we really had to examine and say, like, is this doing anything to build the story world, or is it more of just a fun fact that you want to throw in there? So I had to kind of take the chainsaw to a lot of the pros there and get rid of a lot of the fluff that wasn't serving the story.
Did you outline the horror elements or let them develop as you wrote?
There's the age-old debate, plotter versus pantser. So my writing style is a little bit fluid and a little bit wacky in the sense that I don't really fall nicely into either category. I mean, it kind of depends on what I'm writing at the time, and then the headspace that I'm in at that time as well. So for this one, I mean, I outlined in the very vaguest of senses, meaning that I might have written down like one sentence or maybe one idea per scene. But for the most part, I mean, things kind of flowed naturally and organically. It was just a story that kind of took on a life of its own, and just, I was along for the ride for most of it.
That was so much fun. Thank you for your wonderful answers and for that insight into your story, which I really enjoyed. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Again, just wanted to say another huge thank you for having me on. This was a total blast to do, and would definitely love to come back to do another installment. If any of your viewers are interested in learning more, I can be found on Facebook at Stoney Brooks Author. You guys can email me at stonybrooks.author@gmail.com. I absolutely love hearing from readers. I do my best to get back to everyone in a timely manner. Keep in mind that I do work a day job, though, so it might take a day or so for me to get back to you. But I definitely do my best to get back to everyone. Lastly, follow me on Amazon. I mean, I have another release out, Angry Hornet Nest, that came out in October 2025 and is available in paperback, Kindle edition, or via audiobook. So check that one out for sure. And then also I have another release coming out in tentatively scheduled for October of 26. So this one is going to be kind of a mishmash of Jenny Kiefer's This Wretched Valley and Scott Smith's The Ruins. So this one is super tight pacing, very fast, and I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this one. Thank you again for everything that you do. See you later.
Join us next week for another Plotopsy with E.F. Watson, the author of The Smog Cursed Kingdom. See you then.